Art. All of Europe seems to be scrambling, getting civilians out any way they can. Malta's international airport remains the center of activity for all air evacuations from Libya. In fact, so many flights are coming and going that plane spotters are flocking here to try to keep track of all the activity. In Greece, families wait for loved ones, hoping for any information. And when they finally meet up, horror stories of the violence they've witnessed.
There was absolutely no way to reach the airport unless there was an evacuation mission from a country. You were attacked. They carried batons, sticks, broomsticks, the policemen, or they could be mercenaries as well. Anyone who approached was attacked. You had no chance to ask questions. Similar scenes are playing out across the continent. In Bosnia, those who have just returned don't hold back their feelings when it comes to the Libyan government.
They are lying that 1,000 people were killed, not 1,000, but 5,000 were killed. Just in one bombing during the night, 590 people were killed.
Back in Tripoli, as people board the British frigate, soldiers have become humanitarian workers for the time being, making sure the youngest in this crisis won't be trapped in a place that's getting worse by the day. Cal Perry, Al Jazeera, Malta.
Half past the hour on Al Jazeera, time to run you through the main developments from a day of protest over the Middle East. This has been the biggest development. Muammar Gaddafi, Libya's leader, threatening more bloodshed during a surprise appearance in front of his supporters in Green Square in Tripoli. The city will open the country's weapons stocks and every Libyan will be armed. This was earlier in the day when his troops and militia opened fire on protesters in Tripoli. Iraq as well, where protests over corruption and a lack of basic services and jobs turned violent. At least 10 are reported dead in clashes with security forces around the country. Egypt, and exactly a month after they started the protests which ousted President Mubarak, Egyptians have been back in Cairo's Liberation Square. They're demanding quick reforms from their military rulers. And tens of thousands of supporters and opponents, we have to say, of Yemen's president have held rival rallies in the capital, Sana'a. Now, we are getting a report through the AFP news agency that the Libyan ambassador to Portugal has quit. He has denounced the, quote, tyrannical regime of Colonel Gaddafi, and it adds to a whole slew of countries where ambassadors have either resigned or said we are now with the people rather than the actual regime. Want to go to the UN now, talk to Kristen Salumi, our correspondent there, because the UN Security Council is to discuss the situation in Libya later on Friday. Before that, though, Kristen, while we're talking diplomats, you've been talking to one there. What have you heard?
That's right. The Deputy Ambassador to the United Nations, Ibrahim Dabashi, spoke to the media just a short time ago. He is one of the Libyan diplomats who broke from Gaddafi early on. He was the one who called an emergency Security Council meeting earlier this week after breaking with Gaddafi and saying that something needed to be done by the international community in order to stop the violence there. Just a short time ago, he reiterated that message, saying that this was the time for the international community to step in. The situation was urgent. He said that government forces are massing near Green Square in Tripoli right now, and he predicted that thousands of people would be killed today if action wasn't taken soon. Interesting situation at the embassy, at the mission to the UN here. The deputy ambassador speaking out. The ambassador, Abdurrahim Shalgram, has been very quiet in recent days. Earlier in the week, he was standing by Gaddafi. We asked Dabashi where he is now, where he stands. He said that he stands with the rest of the mission and that he, Dabashi, was speaking for the mission. The picture of Gaddafi that used to be in the lobby was taken down. We don't have any way of confirming where Shalgram stands at this point, but this was a press conference that was called at the mission to call for the international community to act against Gaddafi.
Security Council meeting, Kristen, just to put it in some sort of context is the word, but the UN Human Rights Council put a statement out earlier condemning, calling for cessation. I wonder if we expect anything more or just the same from the Security Council when it comes out.
Well, certain members of the Security Council have been working fast and furiously to put together a draft resolution dealing with Libya. The French and the English have taken the lead on this. in drafting a sanctions resolution. Right now, they say that all options are on the table. Some of the things that we expect to see in this draft include an arms embargo against Libya, other financial sanctions like asset freeze for Gaddafi and anyone else in the government that's considered to be helping him. Also, another thing that they're floating is the possibility of referring Libya to the International Criminal Court for an investigation of crimes against humanity. All of this is being worked into a draft resolution at this time. Don't expect it to include a no-fly zone. That's considered too difficult to negotiate. And the aim, these Western diplomats are telling us, is to try to get something through quickly. Do I think it's going to happen today? No, not likely. This is still in the draft stages. They're very much working on the wording. The draft has yet to be circulated to the other members of the council. So that means that the serious negotiations on the content of the resolution have yet to take place. These things normally can take weeks, even months, but again, the effort is to do something quickly. So that is the attempt. Whether they can pull it off or not remains to be seen. I don't think we'll see any actual action until the middle of next week, but we may get some indications of where they're headed in a couple of hours.
All right, Christian Salumi live at the United Nations in New York. Thank you very much indeed for that, updating us on a Security Council meeting coming up. Tariq Youssef in the studio with us, as he has been throughout the evening, Senior Fellow at the Brookings Institute in Washington. While we're talking about UN Security Council meeting, and I put it to Kristen before, condemnations, calls for cessation, what does it amount? It doesn't amount to anything.
It may not amount substantively to much, but symbolically it's still, I think, quite relevant. All these signals, I think you have to put yourself in the position of officials sitting in Tripoli right now. All the signals coming to them, defections, resignations, governments threatening with financial embargoes, perhaps referrals to the International Criminal Court. The Security Council is discussing Libya. The Human Rights Council is examining the possibility of suspending Libya's membership. Libya's representative there said he stood with the people. Shalgam, whom you were just referring to a few minutes ago, came out yesterday with a statement saying he doesn't exclude the possibility that Gaddafi would perhaps step down. The accumulative effect of this, I think, can be significant. This, on the other hand, leaves the substance question to be answered.
Tariq, let's just look at these pictures which they've been rolling while we've been talking. These just come in from Tobruk. That celebratory atmosphere, again, despite the man holding a gun there, I think he is actually celebrating. Yeah. This is, I mean, you're a Libyan yourself. I mean, did you ever think you'd see something like this?
Not in my lifetime.
Really?
And I still have many years to go, but many people had given up on the country. They thought the damage done by 42 years of Gaddafi's rule was perhaps irreparable, and that it would require 2 to 3 generations to essentially deal with it. We're seeing many signs of jubilation, joy, civility, solidarity that are truly Libyan, I think. And I think there's a new sign of a Libyan sense of nationalism that was created in the last week or two on account of this defiance by the public.
You could create nationalism in a week after 42 years of oppression?
You could rediscover it. It may lay dormant. You may suppress it. You may avoid it. And certainly many of us in the diaspora.
And it's sorry to interrupt, it's funny, just when you mention nationalism, I'm just casting my mind back to Gaddafi's speech early in the evening, because he was talking about, actually, let me look for the exact line that he said, about the flag. Life without green banners hoisted is useless. It is the life of pride and dignity. Everyone's got nationalism at the moment, but it's completely divided between what Gaddafi and the regime thinks is nationalism and what the people do.
I think it's Gaddafi's Libya versus the future new Libya that the masses are expressing when they're given a chance to do so. I think for many of them, they're past Gaddafi. They just want to secure the gains they've made. Gaddafi, I think, was appealing to, as I suggested earlier, a completely different discourse. He was preparing for a foreign invasion. He was appealing to Libyans' sense of nationalism, defiance of the international community or what foreign designs might be prepared. He did not refer to what was happening in the east or what was happening further to the west. That suggests to me that he's either still in the mode of denial or is trying to essentially just recreate the facts on the ground and establish a new reality through the propaganda machine that is still under his control.
Different perspectives on nationalism, I guess, is what we're coming into there. Tariq Youssef giving us his opinion. Thank you. Do stay with us. We'll keep coming back to you, of course. Well, this unrest in the Middle East Continuing to push up oil prices. This is a global issue, of course. Rob Reynolds has this report from Los Angeles, complete other side of the world, on the effect the price hikes are having on consumers there.
Motorists in Los Angeles are reeling from hefty fuel price hikes.
Ridiculously high. Sure, they get away with it. Who's going to stop them?
Oil has flirted with the $100 a barrel mark in recent days as the violent upheaval in oil-rich Libya has reduced worldwide oil supplies. U.S. consumers are now paying $3.22 on average for a gallon, or about 3.8 liters, of gas. In car-dependent California, the average price hit $3.74 a gallon on Thursday. Those prices force people like aspiring actor Sam Weller to make tough choices.
I'll literally have like $10 in my pocket, and it's sort of like I have to split that between food and gas. So I'll put $5 in the tank in order to get me over the hill, and then I'll use the remainder of the $5 to somehow scrap together lunch.
But the pain doesn't stop at the pump. The high price of fuel has a ripple effect all through the American economy at a time when it's still struggling to recover from the recession. Higher cost of transport boosts the cost of food, travel, manufactured products, and a host of items from airline tickets to eggplants. Price increases act like a tax on consumers, reducing their spending power.
If consumers react to it believing that prices are going to go higher, their confidence will decline, which will cause them to cut back even further on consumer discretionary purchases. That hasn't happened yet, but that's certainly one of the risks that we face.
Traders say the images coming out of the Middle East have spooked the oil market.
It is easy to create fear in the oil market when it is centered on the most important oil-producing region in the world.
The potential impact on jobs and growth, with unemployment already at 9%, makes policymakers in the White House nervous.
Our focus now is on monitoring this and making sure that we know what our options are if they need to be taken.
Some economists predict U.S. gas prices will climb nearly 40 cents per gallon in the coming days. Rob Reynolds, Al Jazeera, Los Angeles.
A couple of other protests around the Middle East to talk you through. This is Jordan on Friday. People demanding political and economic reform. Around 5,000 people held a rally in Amman amid a strong police presence, calling for constitutional changes, in particular a limit on the powers of the monarch, King Abdullah. The government has recently introduced financial and political concessions to prevent a spillover of anti-government protests in neighbouring countries. And in Tunisia, thousands have also filled the streets of central Tunis, calling it a day of rage against Muammar Gaddafi and the suppression of protests by the regime there.